What's up and welcome to 17 Non. Today we're going to be making some Katsudon. Katsudon is a deep-fried pork cutlet that is cooked in a dashi and soy broth that is packed full of umami. This is Japanese comfort food 101 and it's extremely simple to make. And before we begin, you can help support the channel by clicking on the like, subscribe, share button and all that other good stuff. I really appreciate it. With all that said, let's get straight into the recipe. What's up? Let's get straight into this recipe. To take the tonkatsu to that next level, we're going to make up a brine. In a saucepan, add 480 ml of water, 12 grams of light brown sugar, 70 grams of sea salt, half a teaspoon of white peppercorns, 5 grams of sliced ginger and 2 garlic cloves. Place the pan onto a high heat and bring the liquid up to a boil. All we're looking to do here is to dissolve the salt, and when that's ready, remove from the heat. And now we have our brine, placed into a container and allowed to completely cool. When cool, we can now brine some pork loin. What I got here is 2 pork loins, which will naturally serve 2 people. Add the 2 loins to a Ziploc bag, then add all of the brine. And just for the record, the purpose of brining is that it's going to season the pork and make it nice and tender. Remove any excess air that's left inside the bag, then seal nice and tightly. Place the pork into the refrigerator and allow it to brine for 12 hours. Next up, we want to make a dashi stock that will make up the Katsudon broth. In a saucepan, add 5 grams of kombu, 3 to 4 dried shiitake mushrooms and 750 ml of water. Place the stock onto a medium to high heat and bring the temperature up to 70 degrees centigrade. Then when at temperature, remove the kombu and dried shiitake mushrooms. Add 5 grams of bonito flakes and remove from the heat. Let the dashi sit and steep for 15 minutes, then pass through a fine sieve. And now we have dashi. Allow this to cool, then place with the brine to mature overnight. The following day, the brine should be ready and it's now time to cook. Remove the 2 loins from the brine and place onto a tray. Briefly wash to remove some of the brine. If you don't do this, then the pork will be way too salty and that's never good. When washed, place onto a tray and pat dry. You want to try and remove as much moisture as possible. Place the pork to one side and we can move on to making the broth. Now to make up the broth that we'll finish the tonkatsu in. To the dashi we made the day before, add 3 tablespoons of light soy, 2 tablespoons of mirin, 2 tablespoons of sake and 2 tablespoons of white sugar. Mix this well, then place this to one side as we'll use this to finish the tonkatsu towards the very end. Now to make up the dredge that we'll use to make up the tonkatsu. In 3 separate containers you want to add flour, egg wash and some panko breadcrumbs. You can make up your own panko if you wish, but for Katsudon this will do just fine. When ready, you're after a setup that looks like this. First, let's take out the pork and evenly coat in the flour. Dust off any excess flour, then add to the egg wash. Evenly coat in the egg wash, then add the pork back to the flour. Coat again in the flour, then back into the egg wash. The reason for doing this 2 times is to create a good crust when cooking tonkatsu. Finally, add to the panko and evenly dredge. I like to pat in the panko to get a good coating on the pork. When ready, place the pork onto a tray and we're just about ready to cook. To finish the tonkatsu, we have the sauce made up already. Make the end of the cooking slightly easier, slice 1 white onion into strips and crack open 2 eggs per portion. Lightly whisk the eggs as we want them nice and velvety. Now we're ready to cook. Start by washing and cooking enough rice for 2 people in usual rice cooker fashion. Next, add a generous amount of cooking oil to a deep saucepan. Bring the oil temperature up to 170 to 180 degrees centigrade. When nice and hot, add the pork cutlet. We want to fry these one by one to prevent the oil temperature from dropping too much. I like to constantly rotate the pork to maintain an even golden crust. After 3 to 4 minutes, the cutlet should now be nice and golden brown. Remove from the oil, then place onto a tray to remove off any excess oil. Ideally you want to use a wire rack, but I couldn't find mine for some reason. Place the fried cutlet onto a chopping board and slice into even strips. The sound of that crispy breadcrumb never gets old. Place the cutlet to one side, now we can bring everything together. Place a small frying pan onto a high heat, then add some of the dashi soy broth made earlier. Add a handful of sliced onions and bring the broth up to a boil. Reduce the broth by half, then add the sliced cutlet. Finally, pour the egg over the top and continue to cook until the egg's just about cooked. You can place a lid over the top if you like, but I like my eggs kinda under. When ready, the egg should be just set and the cutlet should have soaked up all that delicious umami. Pull out the rice and we can now plate this thing up. First, let's load up a bowl with some steamed rice. Probably too much rice, but that's all good. Next, add the katsu over the top. As you can see, I'm clearly struggling to get the katsu out of the bowl, but with the power of editing, it looks nice and smooth. Finally, I like to top with togarashi, which is a Japanese 7-spice, some sliced nori sheet, and some sliced green onions. And for a little bit of heat, I like to add some chili oil, or otherwise known as ryu. And that's pretty much it. We now have Katsudon. This bowl of Katsudon ended up being pretty damn good. By brining the night before, the pork ended up being super tender. If you made it to this point in the recipe, then kudos. And let me know in the comments if you get to try out this recipe. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, then simply click on the subscribe button and I'd really appreciate it. With all that said, see you guys on the next recipe. Take care, and as always, peace.